Welcome to Unit 1, Module 4, Environmental Threats. Learning Objectives. By the end of this module, you will be able to learn what are the environmental threats being faced today, understand the seriousness of environmental threats, discern the role of common man and the government. In recent years, the expansion of science and technology, industrialization, urbanization, and the advancement of transport and communication have impacted the environment both positively and negatively. Their negative impact is posing a threat, resulting in complete destruction of the environment. The World Economic Forum 2018 Global Risk Report have penned down that in recent times there is extreme weather crisis, natural disasters, failure of climate change mitigation and adaptation, water crisis, biodiversity loss, air and soil pollution, to name a few. These threats are of great concern now as well as for the future. Now let us see some of the environmental threats that is being faced by the earth. 1. Climate change. 2. Biodiversity loss. 3. Pollution. 4. Natural resources drain. 5. Water crisis. 6. Deforestation. 7. Soil degradation. 8. Oceanic dead zone and ocean acidification. Now let us see each of these in detail and how they pose a threat to the environment. Number 1. Climate change. According to the Global Risk Report 2019, environmental worries have surpassed economic concerns. Environmental risks are found to be increasing at a very fast pace. Increased occurrences of extreme weather events are attributed to climate change, which is a leading cause for concern. According to Scientific American, climate change is increasing in its frequency and severity of natural disasters such as droughts, wildfires, heat waves, rainstorms, tropical cyclones, flooding, decline in crop production and hurricanes. The 2018 Global Risks Report warns of the potential for catastrophic events to disrupt food supply and cause famines. NASA confirmed that the carbon dioxide level have increased from 280 parts per million to 400 parts per million over the past 150 years. The use of fossil fuels, intensive agriculture and other human activities have been identified as some of the reasons for this. Global warming. Since the Industrial Revolution, the progressive increase in the lower atmosphere's temperature as a result of the growth in greenhouse gases is said to be the cause for global warming. Compared to the pre-industrial levels, carbon dioxide parts per million is at 418 and the global temperature has risen by 1.1 degrees Celsius. More than 4 million years ago, carbon dioxide level on earth were as high as they are now. Increased emission of greenhouse gases have led to a rapid and steady increase in global temperature, which in turn is causing catastrophic events all over the world. The world is experiencing some of the most devastating bushfires ever seen. Locusts swarming across parts of Africa, Middle East and Asia, destroying crops, and Antarctica experiencing its first heat wave with temperatures exceeding 20 degrees Celsius. Constantly, scientists warn that the planet has passed a series of tipping points that could have catastrophic consequences. One such example is the permafrost melt in Arctic regions. Permafrost is a permanently frozen layer on or under the earth's surface. It consists of soil, gravel and sand, usually bound together by ice. Permafrost usually remains at or below 0 degrees centigrade for at least 2 years. Permafrost can be found on land and below the ocean floor. The others include Greenland ice sheet melting at an unprecedented rate, accelerating sixth mass extinction and increasing deforestation in the Amazon rainforest, to name a few. The melting ice caps and the sea level rise because of global warming and the climatic change. The Arctic is warming more than twice as quickly as the rest of the earth due to the climate crisis. As a result of the rising global temperature, sea levels are rising more than twice as quickly as they did for most of the 20th century. The world's oceans are currently rising by an average of 3.2 millimeters each year and are projected to reach a height of approximately 0.7 meters by the end of the century. Greenland ice sheet provides the greatest threat to the increasing sea level in the Arctic, since melting land ice is the primary driver of rising sea levels. In the light of this fact, last year's summer precipitated the loss of 60 billion tons of ice from the Greenland, sufficient to raise the world's sea level by 2.2 millimeters in a matter of months. This is possibly the greatest of the environmental challenge. According to satellite data, the Greenland ice sheet lost a record quantity of ice in 2019, an average of 1 million tons per minute throughout the entire year. This is one of the most significant environmental issues with cascading impact. The sea level would increase by 6 meters if the entire Greenland ice sheet melted. In the meantime, the Antarctic continent adds another 1 millimeter every year, or 1/3 of the annual world increase to the rise in sea level. According to the Canadian Ice Service, the last entirely intact ice shelf in the Canadian Arctic recently collapsed, losing around 80 square kilometers or 40% of its extent over a 2-day period in late July. According to research and advocacy organization Climate Central, sea level rise this century could flood coastal areas that are currently home to 340 million to 480 million people, forcing them to migrate to safer areas and contributing to overpopulation and resource strain in the areas to which they migrate. Number 2, biodiversity loss is the second environmental threat. According to the 2018 Global Risk Report, biodiversity loss due to species extinction is a threat not just to the environment but also to the global economy. An alarming pace of extinction is occurring globally. According to The Guardian and University of Wisconsin Eau Claire, intensive agriculture, unsustainable fishing, animal poaching, habitat loss and destruction, acid rain and climate change threaten thousands of species. Even a smallest disruption to the ecosystem will cause a rippling effect to all the species on earth. According to a recent WWF analysis, the population size of mammals, fish, birds, reptiles and amphibians declined by an average 68% between 1970 and 2016. The biodiversity loss is attributed to a number of sources. The most important contributor towards biodiversity loss is the land use change. Further, conversion of the ecosystems like forests, grasslands and mangroves into agricultural land has further deteriorated our ecosystem. Overfishing. We have taken the ocean for granted for a long time. We have been throwing lots of rubbish into the ocean without considering the consequence. Now is the time to pay for our mistakes. Due to indiscriminate fishing, numerous fish species are on the verge of extinction. A decline in biodiversity poses problems to the life species. Further, illegal wildlife trade has a substantial impact on the animals such as sharks, seahorses and pangolins. All these are becoming critically endangered species. The third threat is pollution. The 2018 Global Risks Report identifies air, water and land pollution as one of the most serious threats. The unpleasant result of urbanization over the past century is pollution in all forms. According to World Health Organization (WHO), air pollution is currently the greatest environmental concern in the world, causing ill health among the life species. It is responsible for around 3.7 million deaths annually. According to UNICEF, in 1990, Africans who died due to outdoor air pollution was 164,000. This number increased to 258,000 in 2017. Industrial sources and automobiles are the primary contributors to air pollution. The NOx and particulates from automobiles remain suspended in the air for a very long time. Acid rain. Acidic precipitation is believed to be primarily induced by the emission of sulfur dioxide and oxides of nitrogen into the atmosphere. Added to this are the emissions from burning biomass. Further, poor air quality is also caused by dust storms. According to an assessment from the European Union Environmental Agency, air pollution caused 400,000 deaths in the European Union in 2012 alone. In the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, there has been increased focus on the role of air pollution on how the chemicals play in the transfer of viral molecules. Preliminary investigation have found a positive link between COVID-19 related deaths and air pollution. An association is found between the airborne particles and the propagation of the virus. This may have contributed to the high death toll in China, where the air quality is very poor. However, research is required to find whether there is a link between air pollution and the spread of virus. Nearly 25 to 40 million people are affected due to air pollution during the 20th century. This is because of the emission of industrial chemicals such as CFCs. It is stated that the ozone layer has become thinner. This is because of the newly discovered effect of air pollution, namely the expanding hole in the ozone layer in the atmosphere above Antarctica. Further, there is mounting evidence of global ozone depletion. This can increase the quantity of UV light that reaches the earth. This UV radiation can cause damage to the crop as well as to the mankind on giving skin cancer. There are different types of pollution which is becoming a threat to the environment. 1. Water pollution. 2. Poisoned rainwater. 3. Contaminated groundwater. 4. Salinated water. 5. Nutrient pollution, and 6. Plastic pollution. Water pollution. Earth's freshwater resources are dwindling, which is a significant contributor to environmental degradation. Approximately 1.2 billion people on earth do not have access to safe drinking water. The second pollution is the poisoned rainwater. Rainwater, which in its purest form is drinkable, when collected in places where there is high population concentration and industrial activity, the water becomes poisonous. Both mankind and animal are now poisoned by the pollutant components such as nitrates and nitrites, sulfur dioxides and sulfates, which gets mixed with the rainwater. The third type is contaminated groundwater. Groundwater aquifers and rivers are becoming increasingly polluted. This is because of the liberal use of fertilizers and agri-chemicals for pest control, to increase the production of agricultural products. It is becoming increasingly difficult to get pure drinking water. 4. Salinated water. As aquifers in the coastal locations are getting overexploited and their levels decline, seawater penetrates and takes their place. This causes salinated water to get filled in the aquifers. 5th is nutrient pollution. In addition, nutrient pollution from fertilizers, houses and other sources causes eutrophication in lakes, ponds and oceans. According to Mugabe, nutrient pollution and global warming have created 500 oxygen free dead zones in the ocean. Plastic pollution. According to the 2018 Global Risks Report, microplastics are present in 83% of the world's tap water due to plastic pollution, and majority of the world population drinks tap water. Further, as a result of agriculture and industrial chemical pollution, plant, animal and sea species are killed or harmed by these poisonous materials. According to the survey published in the scientific journal Nature, around 14 million tons of plastics gets into the ocean annually. This endangers the ecological habitats and the species that inhabit the ocean. If no action is taken, it is expected that the plastic catastrophe would expand to 29 million metric tons by the year 2040. Further, if we are going to include the microplastics in the ocean, then the number is expected to reach 600 million tons by 2040. Next, the fourth environmental threat is natural resource drain. An expanding global population causes a drain on the natural resources, since more number of people on planet Earth requires more water, more food, more energy and more materials for infrastructure, and hence it causes a drain on the natural resources. As human population continues to increase, the environmental stress and resource depletion increases. As population increases, more wood in the forest has to be removed for developing the infrastructure, more things are manufactured and consequently more pollution is generated. And thus, an expanding global population poses a hazard to the environment. However, this is also related to the larger challenge posed by consumption, which is far more intricate and closely related to the distinct supply and demand structure. The Australian Academy notes that consumption might vary depending on the economic status, the age, the gender of that locality. Food waste. Around 1.3 billion tons of food intended for human use is lost or squandered. This would feed 3 billion people. A third of greenhouse gases emission each year are attributed to food loss and waste. Both developing and developed nations experience food loss and waste at various stages. While in developing nations, 40% of the food waste happens at the post-harvest and processing levels. In developed nations, 40% of food waste occurs at the retail and consumer levels. A startling amount of food is thrown away at the retail level due to aesthetic considerations. For example, in the US, more than 50% of all produce is discarded because it is regarded too ugly to be sold to the consumers, which equates to nearly 60 million tons of fruits and vegetables. Food insecurity is a result of this, which is another of the top environmental threat in the list. Next, the fifth environmental threat is water crisis. Water scarcity is one of the primary environmental issues identified by WWF. Every continent is experiencing a water deficit. Dish Well reports that although 70% of the Earth's surface is covered by water, only 2.5% of this water is drinking water, fresh water, that people, plant and animal can use for drinking can use for drinking purposes. The majority of cases are caused by irresponsible overuse. The demand for water extracted from groundwater reservoirs and rivers is increasing. Deforestation impact. WWF considers deforestation as a major environmental problem. According to the 2018 Global Risks Report, 29.7 million hectares of forest has been cleared during 2016. Deforestation causes a serious threat to the natural equilibrium of ecological systems. This is predominantly found in areas where trees are cut down and beyond. Further, drought can have a serious impact on food production because forest loss is directly related to soil erosion. Deforestation is also one of the major reasons for global warming. In addition, it is responsible for the reduction of atmospheric oxygen and displacement of flora and fauna. Brazil, Democratic Republic of the Congo and Indonesia are the three continents with the highest rate of deforestation. Since the turn of the century, realizing the importance, Indonesia is combating deforestation by growing more trees and presently is found to have started several afforestation measures. The seventh environmental threat is soil degradation. According to WWF, soil degradation is another important threat to the environment. The diverse outcomes of soil degradation can have devastating effects on all forms of life. This soil degradation causes soil erosion, soil compaction and soil damage. Soil erosion can happen due to wind or water when the protective cover of the trees and other vegetations are destroyed and the topsoil is lost. Soil compaction happens in regions where the ground is zero grazed, which is overgrazed, that is soil loses its fertility. The ground is not able to support the plant necessary for mineral recycling. Soil damage is caused by intensive tillage characteristic of modern agriculture. Compaction and loss of soil reduces the land's capacity to absorb and retain the water got by precipitation. This can result in soil drought and further decreases the recharge of groundwater, reservoirs and rivers. Food and Agricultural Organization (FAO) reports that the removed soil is deposited downstream as sediments, which in excessive quantities can again pollute and harm the fish and other aquatic life. The eighth environmental threat is the oceanic dead zones. When oxygen level in the sea drops very low, the marine life in that part of the ocean can no longer support and hence that ocean part becomes a dead zone. Typically, they appear in heavily polluted coastal regions such as Gulf Coast of North America, where the water contains many pollutants. The next is ocean acidification. The increase in global temperature has an impact on the ocean's pH level as well as on the Earth's surface. About 30% of the carbon dioxide produced into the Earth's atmosphere is absorbed by the seas. The amount of carbon dioxide that is absorbed back into the water increases as larger concentration of carbon emissions are released as a result of human activities like burning fossil fuels and the effect of global climate change like increased rate of wildfires. The ocean's acidity can be significantly affected by even the smallest pH scale adjustment. Ocean acidification has the potential to have a significant impact on the marine's ecosystem, species, food webs and habitat quality. Marine species like oysters, their shells and even their skeletons may start to dissolve once the pH level are too low. However, coral bleaching and the ensuing loss of coral reefs are two of the major environmental issues caused by ocean acidification. This phenomena happens when the symbiotic interaction between the coral reefs and the algae that dwells there is disrupted by the rising water temperature, pushing the algae away and causing the coral reefs to lose their naturally brilliant colors. According to some scientists, coral reefs could disappear entirely by 2050. The ability of coral reef systems to rebuild their ecoskeletons and recover from these coral bleaching events could be hindered by higher ocean acidity. Ocean acidification has also been connected in several research as one consequence of ocean plastic pollution. The buildup of germs and other microbes caused by plastic waste deposited in the ocean harms the marine life ecosystem and causes coral bleaching. Having heard about the environmental threats, there are some criticisms that is getting recorded along with these environmental threats, which is poor governance. According to economists such as Nicholas Stern, the climate catastrophe stems from various market failures. Economists and environmentalists have urged policymakers for years to increase the price of activities that emit greenhouse gases, one of our greatest environmental pollution. The absence of what constitutes the greatest market failure is the failure to introduce carbon taxes globally and make it mandatory. Introduction of carbon tax is expected to stimulate the development of low carbon technologies. To reduce emissions fast and efficiently, government must not only substantially increase the support for green innovation to reduce the price of low carbon energy sources, but also it has to implement a variety of policies that address other market inefficiencies. Currently, there is a national carbon tax which is in effect in 27 countries throughout the world, including several EU nations, Canada, Singapore, Japan, Ukraine and Argentina. Considering this, it is required that it is mandatorily implemented across all countries in the planet Earth. According to 2019 OECD Tax Energy Use Report, the current tax system are not sufficiently aligned with the emission profile of energy sources. For instance, the OECD suggests that carbon taxes on coal extraction are not severe enough, notwithstanding their effectiveness for the energy business. Sweden has successfully adopted a carbon tax. The charge is $127 per ton and has decreased the emission by 25% since 1995, while the country's GDP has grown by 75% over the same period. According to the Paris Agreement, a pact made as part of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, nations must drastically cut down their emission of greenhouse gases by the year 2100, ideally so that the temperature rise is less than 1.5 degrees Celsius. However, joining it is optional and breaking it has no practical consequences. The topic of equity, which permits certain nations like China to profit from allowing poorer nations to pollute more in order to advance to the point where they can create technology to emit less, continues to be a difficult one. To conclude, our time has seen significant advancement in science, technology and finance. Today's generation is up against a significant challenge: how to use the resources at hand sustainably to create a more resilient future. It is the duty of scientists, decision makers, global leaders, societies and government from different areas and countries to lower the global dangers by establishing more achievable goals and cooperating to create a better world for everybody. Now let us see some of the questions and answers. Questions 1. What is destroying our environment? We should not say what, it is who. Mankind is the cause for all destruction on this earth. The large scale consumption and in some instances unnecessary utilization depletes our natural resources and causes imbalances to the ecosystem. Deforestation and conversion of wild spaces for human food production have largely been blamed for the destruction of the earth's web of life. 75% of the earth's ice free land has been significantly altered by human activity, and almost 90% of the global wetlands have been lost since 1700. We mankind have been exploiting and destroying nature. Question 2. What is the role of government in environmental issues? Government is often ascribed a pivotal role in protecting the environment. For instance, through the implementation of environmental policies that protect the environment directly or solve environment collective action problems. Governments can make a difference by supporting small local producers who, unlike large factory farms, employ sustainable practices, care about land restoration, benefit the nearby communities, and make animals and crop more resilient to climate change. Question 3. What can common man do to protect the environment? To answer, 10 simple things we human beings can do. 1. Reduce, reuse and recycle as much as possible. 2. Volunteer up. 3. Educate the public around. 4. Conserve water. 5. Choose sustainable things. 6. Shop wisely and only those which is really required. 7. Use long lasting light bulbs like LEDs. 8. Plant a tree wherever possible. 9. Don't push chemicals into rivers or waterbeds. 10. Use bikes more and use cars less. To summarize, in this module, we have learnt what are the environmental threats being faced today, understood the seriousness of environmental threats, discerned the role of common man and the government. So, with this, we wind up this module on environmental threats. So, thank you for listening.